This is the Capitol Rundown.
No country can sustain what's happening. We are being invaded, and invaded by a lot of people that are people we don't want.
It's all about giving women access to another way to have a child, or a same-sex couple access to a way to have a child.
Even better not start using in the first place, saving many, many lives.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer. A lot happened in Michigan politics this past week, so let's get you caught up. And we begin with a stop in Grand Rapids by former president and current candidate Donald Trump. The presumptive Republican nominee was here to talk about immigration and the southern border. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Raquel Martin has the details.
Donald Trump is putting immigration policy front and center. During his campaign stops on Tuesday, he blamed President Biden for failing to address a surge of migrants at the southern border. Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail. The first campaign event since Super Tuesday, with stops in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Green Bay, Wisconsin.
No country can sustain what's happening. We are being invaded, and invaded by a lot of people that are people we don't want.
Donald Trump is blaming President Biden for what he calls carnage and chaos at the southern border.
Joe Biden's border bloodbath.
Trump told a small gathering of law enforcement and local leaders that the Biden administration policies are putting American citizens in danger. He blames immigration and says the latest data shows border crossings hit a record high this January.
I left, it was a trickle.
If reelected in November, Trump is promising to crack down.
Begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
The White House calls Trump's bloodbath remarks divisive.
We have to denounce any violent rhetoric that we hear, certainly from our leaders, right, that tears our country apart.
And blames Republicans for blocking bipartisan border legislation.
The president will be the first one to stand up here and say he agrees that the border does need some security capabilities.
Tuesday, the White House announced that President Biden will head to Wisconsin next week. The swing state is critical for the president's re-election bid. He won it only narrowly in 2020. For now in Washington, Raquel Martin, back to you.
All right, well, ahead of the former president's visit, Democrats, including Senator Debbie Stabenow, Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and State Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks held a press conference to talk about what they say are Mr. Trump's failures on immigration, unemployment, and Roe v. Wade.
So there's a lot of reasons why we need to address the immigration system, which is broken. But the truth is, Donald Trump isn't interested in border security. Or making our immigration system work. He is only interested in scapegoating people for his own benefit and creating chaos.
The senator also had pointed words for Republicans scoring political points off the death of Ruby Garcia. The Grand Rapids woman was killed in March. Police say the suspect was in the country illegally.
Unfortunately, Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are hell-bent on exploiting Ruby's death for their own politics. Frankly, I think it's shameful.
Well, coming up, we will have much more on Mr. Trump's visit to Michigan, including reactions from the state's Hispanic community and others. And then, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, conservatives have launched a number of efforts across the country to expand bans on abortion. And Democrats are counting on that, giving them a boost at the ballot. That story and a lot more when the Capitol Rundown returns. Welcome back. After former President Donald Trump's campaign visit to Grand Rapids, reactions came in from Michigan's Hispanic community, as well as the family of someone Mr. Trump talked about in his speech on crime. The Rundown's Josh Sanchez has the details.
On day one, I will seal the border and will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country.
To cheers, former President Trump touted plans to combat a so-called invasion of migrants at the southern border.
No country can withstand this invasion.
The campaign stop in Grand Rapids on Tuesday was more than 2,000 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border, but the shooting death of 25-year-old Ruby Garcia in Grand Rapids last month was a cornerstone of Mr. Trump's speech. Michigan State Police say Garcia was found dead on the side of a city highway. Court documents show her boyfriend, Brandon Ortiz Vite, confessed to the crime. Officials say he was staying in the U.S. illegally.
When she walked into a room, she lit up that room, and I've heard that from so many people. I spoke to some of her family.
Garcia's sister, Mavi, tells our sister station Wood TV in Grand Rapids that neither Donald Trump nor his campaign ever reached out to her family. So she was appalled to hear her sister's story included in his campaign speech.
Shocking. I kind of stopped watching it. I only seen up to that.
Trump's speech is also sparking concerns with leaders in Michigan's Hispanic community. Juan Martinez is with the Latino Leaders for Enhancement of Advocacy and Development. He says the idea of a mass deportation could be damaging for industries that rely on migrant labor, from hospitality to agriculture.
Southwest Michigan is doing pretty good economically. Will they look forward to crashing their farms, their greenhouses, their orchards?
Martinez says amplifying fears about migrants from the podium of a presidential candidate also adds an extra layer of concern.
It provides a license for people to take the law into their own hands.
Republican floor leader State Representative Brian Postumus says immigration policy needs to change so the country can be safe and secure. He also challenged Martinez's view of the deportation plan, saying farmers he knows are not relying on illegal residents. Postumus went on to say, "My belief is we need to make coming into this country illegally substantially more difficult so we can make coming here legally much easier." For the Capitol Rundown, I'm Josh Sanchez.
Josh, thank you. Moving on, Democrats are looking to create political momentum in Florida now that abortion is about to be on the ballot there. A delegation of congressional Democrats, including Representative Dan Kildee of Michigan, traveled to Florida Tuesday to call attention to the issue. And this comes after a state Supreme Court ruling that the Biden campaign is hoping will make the conservative-leaning state more competitive. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt explains how.
For the last two presidential elections, Florida has been Trump country. But now Democrats say the red state is back in play.
Florida is now ground zero in the fight to protect the woman's freedom.
The Florida Supreme Court just ruled a 6-week abortion ban can take effect next month. But voters could reverse that because the court also approved a ballot initiative that will give Florida the option to protect abortion access.
Floridians will have a chance to make their voices heard this November.
The Biden campaign is already leaning into the fight, releasing a new TV ad attacking Donald Trump's abortion stance.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
With President Biden promising to protect abortion access if reelected.
Donald Trump doesn't trust women. I do.
George Washington University public health expert Dr. Amita Vyas says this is an opportunity for Democrats.
All of a sudden, a state that they might have sort of pushed away to the side to say we're not going to win, I now believe will really put Florida in play.
Now she says the abortion fight could drive higher voter turnout in Democrats' favor.
Ballot measures in favor of abortion rights have already succeeded in several states, including Ohio and Michigan. Abortion policy really transcends traditional partisan politics.
But Reggie Hobbs with the Tampa Bay Pro-Life Alliance says abortion opponents are rallying too.
Our job now is to get out people who are sympathetic towards the pro-life cause to vote against the amendment.
In Washington, I'm Hannah Brandt.
Coming up, political campaigns are in the midst of fundraising with November getting closer every day. And in the race for Michigan's soon-to-be-open U.S. Senate seat, a lot of money is being spent. That and much more coming up next. Welcome back. In the 2022 election, the U.S. House race between Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin and State Republican Senator Tom Barrett for the 7th District was the most expensive in the country. The candidates spent more than a combined $34 million, with Slotkin defeating Barrett. And her current race could be shaping up the same way in terms of fundraising. The Congresswoman's campaign announced on Thursday it has raised $4.4 million for her run for the U.S. Senate for the first quarter of this year. She and a lot of other candidates are hoping to replace the retiring Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow. Slotkin's campaign says she's raised a total of almost $16 million, the most of any U.S. Senate campaign in state history. And according to numbers from the Federal Election Commission, she has a comfortable financial lead. The FEC has only published totals through the end of 2023. They have Slotkin at $11.7 million, Republican Mike Rogers at $1.9 million, Democrat Hill Harper with $1.3 million, and Republican Sandy Pensler with about $1.1 million. All other candidates had totals fewer than $1 million. Coming up next here on the Capitol Rundown, our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic will be here to give us the scoop on the latest in Michigan politics. But first, we'll have the latest on lawmakers and the governor taking action on a proposed smoking tax. The Capitol Rundown will be right back. Welcome back. Governor Gretchen Whitmer has supported tobacco taxes for vaping products in the past, saying it will help protect children from getting hooked on nicotine. Our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic has the latest, including why some are against the idea.
After she was first elected governor, Governor Whitmer tried to clamp down on the sale of flavored vaping products to young smokers, but the courts eventually shot down her effort. Then, last December, for the first time, the governor opened the door to hiking the state tobacco tax on e-cigarettes and vaping devices, based in part on what one of her daughters told her.
She was telling me that she's got friends who are smoking cigarettes to try to get off of vaping. I'm open to it. Tim, get the bill drafted, get it turned in, and, we'll negotiate.
Well, the bill is now drafted and awaiting its first hearing in a state Senate committee, and the advocates are upbeat about the next move. In 2020 in Michigan, for example, the use of these products resulted in 2,800 hospitalizations for lung-related illnesses and 69 deaths in Michigan. And the health care cost for all this? $5 billion a year. This man runs a coalition of 100 state public health departments, which is strongly pushing lawmakers to say yes to this tax hike. However, the U.S. tobacco industry has feverishly fought such efforts in other states to either water down the legislation or kill it outright. Mr. Steiner reports the public is on his side. 62% support the tax hike.
Many kids will either stop using or just even better, not start using in the first place, saving many lives over the year.
He predicts that 50,000 Michigan residents, including teens, would stop smoking if the tax goes up. That's if state lawmakers put up the votes to do it.
Well, the Rundown's Jerome Duran talked to Tim about that story, including his take on how likely a new tax is to happen. Plus, they discussed former President Donald Trump's visit here to Michigan. Take a listen.
It's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubic, to help us out. Tim, we just saw your report on the governor and some lawmakers wanting to move the e-cigarette tax forward. How realistic is that right now?
Well, let's put this story, Jerma, in the context of this is an election year, and so anytime you're talking about a tax increase, it's a little dicey. But on this one, I think this one's got a snowball's chance, really, actually, because it's addressing the issue of saving the lives of our young children who get hooked on these vaping products and the e-cigarettes. And the theory is if you raise the tax high enough, the kids can't afford it and they won't buy it and they won't smoke it and they'll live longer. However, nothing is ever that easy. There will be some opposition. For example, we're going to be doing a story shortly with a state senator who has a chance to vote on this. And while he supports the concept of protecting our kids, he's not too hot on raising the tax in order to do it. So it's in the hopper. It's getting its first hearing. Big Tobacco will be in town, and it will be fighting it to either kill it or water it down. But lives are at stake here. And just to kind of put this in perspective, each year in the state of Michigan alone, the state spends $5 billion, that's with a B, $5 billion on health care related costs to tobacco use in our state. That's a huge number.
That is a huge number. Wow, that's almost unbelievable, but I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, the big political news this past week in Michigan was Donald Trump's Grand Rapids visit. Of all the headlines coming out of that, what's resonating with voters the most, you think?
Well, first of all, let's make note that one of the #1 issues, and it varies on the poll, but immigration is right up there. There is deep concern across the electorate about immigration and the impact that it has on not only our state, but the nation, and the ramifications of not getting the immigration problem right are well known. So Donald Trump sees an occasion to come into Grand Rapids because as a result of somebody allegedly being in this state illegally, killing a woman, he was in Grand Rapids to take on that issue. The Democrats quickly accused him of exploiting this issue for his own political gain, but the Republicans would come back and say, you know what, Governor Whitmer and others, you're also trying to exploit the abortion issue for your political gain, so what's the difference? And of course the Biden administration fights back and says, you know what, Mr. Trump, we had a chance to help not solve this problem, but make some inroads into making it better, and you told the Senate Republicans to vote no, and they did, and so you're responsible for killing this legislation. In our game, we call that one of these.
Tim, it's always good to see and hear from you. Thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
All right, here's one of these. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you to you both. Coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, Governor Whitmer was in Royal Oak earlier this week to sign a bill package into law. We'll tell you why she says this law helps Michiganders who can't have children still have options for starting families. That story when the Rundown returns. On Monday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the Michigan Family Protection Act. The act decriminalizes paid surrogacy contracts. It's aimed at protecting families who use IVF and ensuring LGBTQ parents are treated equally. Michigan was the last state to have such a law on the books. Now, supporters say the bill protects surrogates, parents, and children, which will help people start families. Only 2 Republican senators supported the bills.
I was shocked that so many legislators in Michigan voted against these bills. It's all about giving women access to another way to have a child, or a same-sex couple access to a way to have a child, while ensuring that every child has equal protection under the law. This is the most pro-family thing this legislature's been able to get done, and they've gotten a lot of good stuff done this year.
The Michigan Fertility Alliance says there are more than 300,000 Michiganders who want to have children but can't. If you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just 1 email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletter. And that's our show for this week. Thank you so much for watching the Capitol Rundown. We'll see you again right here next week.